Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear media friends. I'm pleased to welcome each one of you to this virtual press briefing. Today, we have with us Dr. Sandeep Attawar, Chair and Director of Thoracic Organ Transplants and Assist Devices at KIMS Heart and Lung country, a veteran in the field of transplant surgeries with over 24 years of experience. He has to date performed over 12,000 heart surgeries and over 250 transplant surgeries for lungs and heart. He is a contributing author for a multi-volume textbook on heart and lung transplantation, which is due for the release this year by Wiley Publishers. He is also invited to be part of select international panel of experts that will be setting new guidelines for lung transplant worldwide in COVID era. He's also performed 9 post-COVID double lung transplants. This is the largest experience in Asia and probably one of the largest in the world. We welcome you, Dr. Sandeep Attawar. We also have with us Dr. Pavan Yadav, Consultant Interventional Pulmonology, Sleep Medicine, and Lung Transplantation at Aster Hospitals, Bangalore. Dr. Pavan has over 9 years of experience in this field. He has sound knowledge in treating pulmonary diseases, critical care, sleep medicine, interventional pulmonology, and lung transplantation. We welcome you, Dr. Pavan. I may now like to welcome Mr. Pavan Kumar Singh, who underwent heart and lung transplant, and his brother, Mr. Ashish Singh. We also have with us Mr. Marga Bandhu, who underwent bilateral lung transplant at Aster Bangalore, his wife, Mistress Malini Margabandhu, and his son, Mr. Kaushik. We welcome you all, and I welcome all the media who have taken out the time and they have joined the press briefing today. I now request Dr. Sandeep Attawar to start the media briefing.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. It's a unique honor and a privilege to be here on this press meeting. And what's most important is I'm so glad to see both Mr. Margabandhu and Pavan do so exceptionally well. And I think it's a testament to not just their mental strength, their family support, but also to the institute and the organization where they have been treated by an exceptionally committed workforce, clinicians headed by Dr. Pavan Yadav, and a great administrative backbench. It's just been my true honor to collaborate with Aster. I would like you to take this meeting forward.
I would now request Dr. Pavan Yadav to address the media.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. So with the experience of treating lung diseases over several years now, so we come across many patients with chronic lung diseases, which are chronically progressive despite the best of our medical efforts, medical management. Over the last few years, lung transplantation has become a viable option for these patients with advanced lung diseases. And there are very few centers who can collaborate to such a great extent to make this elaborate process a possibility and a huge success. And I'm extremely fortunate to be associated with Sandeep sir, with one of the most successful lung transplantation program in the country. So I would also like to say a few words regarding the ongoing COVID pandemic, which had put an extensive amount of burden on the healthcare system of the world and here in India as well. And a significant up to 5% patients with COVID disease would go on to develop a severe form of COVID disease requiring ICU and ventilatory care. And some of them may end up developing significant amount of lung fibrosis, oxygen dependency, and ventilatory dependency, for which again, lung transplantation is probably the only hope here. And there are certain challenges which comes along with the COVID pandemic. Conducting lung transplantation procedure in the middle of the pandemic is again challenging, considering the amount of infection control measures that needs to be put in place for the safety of the patient, doctors, and hospital staffs who are involved in the procedure. And I'm extremely thankful for the entire management and also Atava Sandeep sir's team for coordinating in such an extensive way to make this lung transplantation procedure a possibility and also a huge success. And the patients are with us today, and we're extremely thankful for them. And they can probably share their experience. And I think that's all from my side. Over to Gitanjali, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pavan. I would go back to Dr. Sandeep. Doctor, please give us some guidelines on, what were the scenario of the lung transplant in the COVID times here, and also give us a brief on the patients and how it was a challenging cases, handling both combined heart and lung transplant together.
I think the first thing that's important is patients trusting you, and I think we're very fortunate that we have the trust of patients, and that comes on the back of a lot of work that you've performed, a great deal of success that you've achieved. But all of this is in the past. If you ask me honestly, I think what is very important is for patients who are suffering from non-COVID lung disease, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Though it is very easy for us to conclude that since they are very sick and they have no other option, they would be forced to take this alternative of undergoing a lung transplant during COVID times. I think the onus is not just on us as physicians, but also as people who have to uphold the science, the responsibility that we carry in order to ensure that patients who trust their lives and put their lives and so much of their investment, their finances in our hands, it is almost imperative for us to ensure that anything that we do is going to be less. The risks of COVID transmission in an immunosuppressed patient after a lung transplant are enormous, given the fact that we did not have a vaccine anywhere in the world. We did not have any answer to the COVID pandemic other than self-protection, safety, following safety guidelines. We can't control the atmosphere. We cannot control the environment. And that's where a great institute with a great deal of infrastructure that is designed to be supporting a transplant service is very, very important. So when we looked at a collaboration in Bangalore, it was but natural for us to look at Aster because they're probably the only center in the state which has facilities that are of the grade or the quality that I would trust as far as setting up a lung program. The dual challenge of a lung is it is not just exposed to the environment, which is something that no other solid organ transplant is exposed to, because every time you breathe in dust particles, you breathe in viruses and bacteria. And especially with COVID being so prevalent in the atmosphere, the time that's taken from acquiring the disease to it manifesting consists of a window period, which obviously is a big risk for many patients. There is no single test that is 100% confirmatory or what would I say, 100% guaranteed test that would tell us that you could safely go across. So it, in some ways, it's a leap of faith too. So unless you have patients and their families trusting you, unless you know that you've put those mechanisms in place where you can probably safely perform a lung transplant in such situations, a hospital environment that allows you to do that, and also a great a team, a medical team, nurses, technicians, perfusionists, anesthesiologists, surgeons, pulmonologists, intensivists, a huge number of individuals who are so committed to make sure that the patient is protected and that and they themselves take such extreme precautions, because all of us, me as a surgeon, I expose myself to 8 or 12 hours of airway exposure. I'm explanting a lung, and I'm implanting it along with 15 members in my team. We are all exposed to the COVID virus. So it's a great personal risk to us too. But in the line of duty, as a soldier who fights on the battlefront, it is important for medical personnel to also take up this challenge, and we've seen that happen in great measure all across the world, where people have risked their own lives in order to help patients who were on the edge of life and death. So this comes to us naturally because that's what we are trained to do and that's what we are supposed to do. While we do not take any credit for it, I think all credit must go to patients and their families for trusting us. And all we want to do as a medical team, as a hospital, as an administrative backbench is to return that trust in due measure. So it is very humbling. At the same time, it is something that I say with a great deal of responsibility, that we are accountable. We are accountable to ensure that we have the highest level of patient care, and that's what we all stand for. I hope, Geeta, that answers some of your questions.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, doctor. But I would also like you to throw some light on this heart and lung transplant scenario in India. Also, how important it is to create awareness on the organ donation.
Yes. Like you correctly mentioned, that's a great question. We probably need close to 2 lakh heart transplants every year in this country, given the disease distribution and the number of patients suffering with end stage heart failure in this country. That is just probably the tip of the iceberg. This is based on estimates on demography, considering the worldwide distribution of heart failure. India probably has a higher number. We are only extrapolating this number based on Western data. As far as lungs are concerned, probably an equal number, maybe twice that number in India, largely because we are a developing nation with a great deal of environmental pollutants, still the ravages of tuberculosis, or what would I say, drug resistant tuberculosis in a large portion of the population, ending up with end stage lung disease. We have a large burden of patients who have something we call primary pulmonary hypertension, where patients have very high lung pressure simply because they have a congenital condition that allows the lung to get damaged progressively, and thereby causing severe back pressure effects on the heart, causing heart failure. So this happens to individuals between 15 to 30 years of age, and they are generally the patients who are the ones who probably end up with a lung transplant or a heart double lung transplant. And then lastly, somebody like Pavan, who has had a congenital heart condition which was incorrectable when he was a child. Unfortunately, the ravages of it progressed to an extent where his lungs got completely damaged because of the high pressures transmitted from the heart, and he eventually required a procedure which would not just change his heart but also his badly damaged lungs. So that was about Pavan. And as far as Mr. Margabandhu is concerned, he has a disease condition which we would generally classify under the broad term called ILD, and that's a progressive damage to the architecture of the lung, or the supporting architecture of the lung, that does not allow the diffusion of gases, the absorption of the excretion of carbon dioxide, and the absorption of oxygen from the atmosphere. As these patients get sicker during the course of their disease, and when medicine stop working, the unfortunate part for them continues to be a life that is oxygen dependent, and with minimum amount of ambulation or ability to walk around. Even simple basic activities like going to the toilet become an excruciating task for many of them. So that caseload, or that volume of patients with end stage lung disease in this country is enormous. It's a massive number. The sad part is that most of them spend most of their lives not even knowing what their disease condition is about. And many a times when they meet referring physicians or treating physicians, they are generally unaware of options available beyond medical therapy. Sadly, most of them linger, continue to suffer, and lead a very painful existence, unfortunately, in many cases ending with death. So unless an awareness of these diseases and the options that are available for many of these patients is made more widely available, or aware, or unless the general public is made aware of these situations, we may not be able to probably convince patients when they turn up at our doorstep for therapy very easily. So I guess awareness is a key. And to sum it up all, is the acute and desperate need for live solutions for patients with end stage heart and lung disease, where uh, you can only have a donor organ coming from a deceased donor. There is no option of a live transplant as far as the heart and lung is concerned, which makes it an even greater challenge, because for the number of road traffic accidents and deaths from natural causes, including a severe stroke, these numbers, though being large in this country, unfortunately, the awareness on organ donation continues to grow slowly, but at a pace which is probably not requisite with the amount of patients that require a deceased organ donation. So my heartfelt request to the press, and the members of the public who are attending this meeting today is to spread this knowledge in your communities through whatever medium of communication that you possess, is to increase the awareness in organ donation, because anytime we pass away, we can give lives to at least 8 individuals, and probably countless others with disabilities like those with orthopedic disabilities, those requiring skin grafts could be immensely benefited by deceased organ donation. So making a pledge for deceased organ donation is probably the key. And as we all make this a dinner table conversation, these are very sensitive matters that we unfortunately cannot discuss with family. But these are things that we should make our wish known to our near and dear in our lives, saying that I would love to be an organ donor champion, or I would love to be somebody who would like to pledge my organs when I'm no more. So these are things that are difficult conversations, sensitive ones to have with family and near and dear. But these are all the more important as we go on with life. In an evolved society, this is the fundamental opinion on which all of us exist. If we are there for each other, that's what will make all our lives more fruitful and more worthwhile. uh, um, that's the other thing I would like to kind of point out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sandeep. One more thing that, because of this COVID, this has impacted the lungs of most of the patients. So we want to know how this program is going to help the patients and also the patients who are at the end stage of the lung. So basically,
Yeah.
the role of lung transplant in the COVID era.
Like Dr. Pavan just mentioned a moment ago, 5% of patients with COVID lung disease progress towards extensive fibrosis and physical damage to the lung architecture. The sad part is all of this is brought about very acutely in patients who were otherwise leading normal lives. An infection so rapacious and so aggressive in its nature has probably ended up destroying their lungs within a period of probably a month and a half, which is so acute in nature. And this duration is generally spent by most of these patients on a hospital bed in various degrees of disability, either with high degrees of oxygen, probably being on a ventilator, or unfortunately sometimes even being on an ECMO. In that's something that we've noticed in so many cases that we've come across. The sad part is that these patients need, if they do not improve with time with all the possible medications that are available, if they don't improve with time, the only solution for them is a lung transplant. And if to give you some perspective, lung transplantation is generally successful the world over. In 90% of the cases, or 85 to 90% of the cases, who undergo an elective lung transplant, where a patient with end stage lung disease is rehabilitated, nutritionally balanced, uh, has to undergo a certain degree of physical rehabilitation, has to demonstrate the ability to be able to walk around for at least 200 to 250 meters, although it may be on high flow oxygen. But that level of physical fitness is important for somebody to undergo an extensive operation such as a bilateral lung transplant and then recover from it. So when you look at that challenge, you're comparing it to somebody who is sick, who is older, who is bedridden for 2 months, who has had multiple infections, not just in the lung, but even in the bloodstream, who is physically deconditioned, who is barely able to move a finger. And these patients have to be rehabilitated on an ECMO. And then a suitable donor has to be identified for him to undergo a lung transplant. Post that, you are expecting them to recover normally, which becomes an even bigger and arduous endeavor. So the challenges of performing a lung transplant on a COVID patient are almost like climbing the Everest without oxygen, if I may use an analogy as such. So it's very, very important for us as physicians to be at the top of our game, along with our teams, to be able to identify the patient who would probably benefit from a very precious resource as a diseased organ. It's not easy to come by a good quality diseased organ when you're looking for one, and then to be able to use it successfully in somebody who's so unwell is an even mightier challenge. And also the matter of organ ethics comes into play, as to when you have so many other patients who are waiting for a lung transplant, how would you supersede them in order to transplant someone who has probably not demonstrated enough characteristics that they would survive such an extensive or difficult operation. So while we jostle with all these ethical questions as physicians, and especially for me, when I lead a program as such, it's not easy. We spend countless hours, many sleepless nights discussing among each other whether we are doing the right thing or whether we are taking the right chance of transplanting somebody who has a extensively COVID damaged lung. But I don't think we have answers to all these questions. These are perennial questions that we'll have to continue to answer throughout our lifetimes. But these are difficult choices that we have to make. So I would like the public and the press in general to understand that it is only when we feel genuinely as a team, as a treating team of physicians and nurses, when we feel that this is an opportunity for someone to live again, to probably have a fruitful life or a productive life going forward, when he undergoes a lung transplant after severe COVID infection. uh, we do not take this lightly. We take this matter with great seriousness, and it sometimes, if you're very fortunate, because luck plays a great chance in this too. Probably God's benevolence plays a greater role in this. When we are successful, it all turns out to be a good decision that we've made. So, I mean, I hope some of these thoughts that I have expressed would probably encapsulate, in general, the challenges that we face when we are treating patients with end-stage COVID lung disease.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atawar. I now request Dr. Pawan to take us through both the case study of Mr. Pawan Kumar Singh, followed by Mr. Markabandhu. Over to you, Dr. Pawan.
Yeah. So our first case was a bilateral lung transplantation. Mr. Bhagabandhu was suffering from a chronic lung disease. It's called as interstitial lung disease. So where there is an architectural distortion, and the damage happens between the alveoli, the air sacs present within the lungs, where the exchange of gas happens. The oxygen is taken from the breathed in air into the body, and carbon dioxide is thrown out. And when there is a damage in the interstitium, the patient suffers to, is unable to breathe comfortably, and they take extensive amount of efforts to do any exertion or any activity, because the lungs are not able to extract the extra amount of oxygen which is required by the body to do the extra work. So these patients, when the disease slowly progresses, will require external oxygen support, which with the progression of the disease, the oxygen requirement progresses, and sometimes they may be oxygen dependent throughout the day. Some of these patients who get tired with the rapid breathing may become dependent upon the external ventilatory support like BiPAP or intermittent BiPAP or NIV. And when the lung is damaged to such an extent, the medical management will not be helpful any further, as because despite medical management, the lung condition would continue to progress. So one such condition, Mr. Bhagabandhu was suffering from that. So the lung transplantation was considered in this condition, and Dr. Srivatsa, who is a pulmonologist working at Aster CMI, who had diagnosed him with ILD and had been managing him. And when he referred Mr. Bhagabandhu to us for the lung transplantation evaluation, we did an extensive amount of discussion with the patient's family, because lung transplantation is like an education process, because since it's a new situation that the patient and the family has to live with for the rest of their lives, they need to understand as to what they're going to go through, and they should be prepared to have the level of dedication to take medications and take precautions through the entire to the rest of their lives post transplantation. So after detailed discussion with the family patients, he underwent pre-transplant evaluation, wherein we do extensive evaluation to see whether he is fit to undergo the transplant, and whether there is any deficiencies. Like for example, some patients may have a poor physical strength, like muscle weakness may be there, the bones may be weak, because since they're spending most of the times indoors and not exposing to the sun, vitamin deficiencies will be there, and they're not nutritionally depleted, so then their BMI may be less. So we need to work on this, do a pulmonary rehabilitation, do the dietary evaluation, and put them on proper dietary management. and make them a better candidate for the transplant. So we have to make them as optimal as possible to undergo a transplant procedure, so that post-transplant they recover sooner and they go home sooner. So after this initial pre-transplant evaluation, we do have this multidisciplinary discussion wherein the team is a big team of pulmonologists, the transplant surgeons, the transplant intensivists, the anesthetist, then physical medicine people, the dietary people sit together and discuss whether the patient is fit to undergo the transplant. And once the patient is deemed fit, then we decide whether the patient requires only the lung transplant or the combined heart and lung transplant. So in this first case, he was requiring bilateral lung transplantation. So after that, he was registered for the cadaveric lung transplantation program under the Jeevan Sarthakate in Karnataka here. And after registration, so when the donor call comes for a suitable organ, which is size matched and blood group matched organ, then the patient is called for the transplant procedure itself. And after the surgery is done, patient is shifted to the ICU for recovery. And so intra-op and post-op course was fairly smooth, and he could come out of the ventilatory support within a day, and then he was initiated on the rehabilitation mobilization procedure. Then he was initiated on the oral feeds early as well, and he recovered very well in the post-op period, and then he could be discharged by the end of 2 weeks. So this was about first patient, and then he's doing fairly well now. He's recovering well at home. The second one was Mr. Pawan Kumar, as Sandeep sir was telling regarding his underlying heart and lung issues. So after all the extensive evaluation, so we decided that he needs a combined heart and lung transplantation. So after the suitable organ was available, so underwent the procedure, and even his intra-op and post-op recovery was fairly smooth. And then he was also he was maintaining without any oxygen support by the end of about 8 to 10 days, and he was mobilizing well, eating food well. So he was also discharged by the end of 2 weeks. And currently, both the patients are on regular follow. We follow up the patients post-transplantation with their spirometry values to assess the lung function, and we monitor their immunosuppressive medication levels by doing the frequent blood tests. And we also keep doing frequent bronchoscopies to assess their airways and to make sure that the lungs are recovering well. So both of them seems to be doing very well, and we're all happy with the end results. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pawan. I now request Mr. Pawan Kumar Singh to share your experience, what you went through, what were the challenges you faced, and how are you doing now? So you will have to unmute yourself.
You have to unmute, Ashish ji.
Okay. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
फिलहाल मैं ठीक हूँ और रेगुलर 40 मिनट रेगुलर वॉक करता हूँ अपने रूम में ही, और मुझे लगता है कि मैं और आधे घंटे वॉक कर सकता हूँ विदाउट ऑक्सीजन। खाने में भी कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। नॉर्मली मैं जो पहले खाना खाता था, जो फूड लेता था 2 या 3 रोटी या थोड़ा सा राइस, अब मैं अटावर सर आप बिलीव नहीं करेंगे, मैं 10 to 12 रोटी खा लेता हूँ एक टाइम में। और फैमिली मेंबर बिल्कुल आश्चर्यचकित है कि मैं इतना मतलब डेवलप कैसे कर गया खाने में। अब पता नहीं वो खाना कहाँ जा रहा है, मुझे पता नहीं है, पेट में है या कहाँ है, लेकिन मैं खा ले रहा हूँ, डाइजेस्ट भी हो जा रहा है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है डाइजेशन में, और वॉक भी बहुत अच्छी तरीके से कर रहा हूँ, सारा एक्सरसाइज भी कर लेता हूँ, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। विदाउट ऑक्सीजन, कोई ऑक्सीजन नहीं, कुछ नहीं। पूरी टीम बहुत अच्छी है और फॉलो अप करते हैं बहुत अच्छे तरीके से। कुछ भी हो मैसेज कर दीजिए, तुरंत उसका रिप्लाई करते हैं। कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम हो, कुछ भी इशू हो, आप सिर्फ मैसेज कर दीजिए ग्रुप में, वो तुरंत फॉलो अप करते हैं विद इन मिनट, और बहुत अच्छी बात है ये। और संदीप सर पे तो पहले से ही विश्वास था, मैं लगभग 1 साल से उनके पीछे पड़ा हुआ था, लगभग 1 साल से उनके पीछे हूँ कि सर ट्रांसप्लांट कर दीजिए, और सब चीज ठीक रहा। अब आगे फ्यूचर में भगवान जाने क्या होगा, बेहतर ही होगा, अच्छा होगा, मुझे पता है अच्छा होगा।
ईश्वर तुम्हारे साथ हमेशा रहे।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच सर।
थैंक यू। क्या आप थोड़ा बताना चाहेंगे यहाँ पे मीडिया दर्शकों को कि आपको कब से क्या प्रॉब्लम थी, कितना सालों तक आपने क्या झेला?
ये मुझे करीब 10 से 12 साल मेरी एज होगी जब मुझे मेरे घर वालों को इसके बारे में जानकारी हुई। शायद जानकारी पहले भी थी, बट उस समय कुछ एक नहीं फाइनेंशियल प्रॉब्लम होगा, तो उस समय मुझे कोलकाता ले जाया गया, बीएम बिरला हार्ट रिसर्च सेंटर। वहाँ देवी सेट्टी साहब थे, डॉक्टर देवी सेट्टी। उन्होंने मुझे देखा और उन्होंने उस समय ऑपरेशन नहीं किए। उस समय मुझे सिर्फ हार्ट में छेद था, बच्चों में होता है हार्ट में छेद। उन्होंने उस समय ऑपरेशन नहीं किया। उन्होंने कहा कि ये ठीक हो जाएगा। बट जब मैं 17-18 साल का हुआ और +2 में था, मैं अपना +2 का एग्जाम देने वाला था, तो मेरी तबीयत काफी बिगड़ गई, बहुत तबीयत खराब हो गई। मुझे एम्स ले जाया गया। एम्स में डॉक्टर क्या नाम था उनका, डॉक्टर त्रिहान ने मुझे वहां देखा और वो उस समय कहे कि ये चीज इनका क्रॉस हो गया है, इनका ऑपरेशन बचपन में ही होना चाहिए था, बट ऑपरेशन नहीं हो पाया, तो इनको मेडिसिन पे ही रहना होगा। उस समय ट्रांसप्लांट और इस सब चीज की बातें नहीं हो रही थी। उसके बाद लाइफ मेडिसिन पे चलता रहा और ऑक्सीजन नहीं लेना पड़ता था। मैं अपना पढ़ाई भी कंप्लीट कर रहा था धीरे धीरे, और डिफिकल्टीज हो रही थी, धीरे धीरे सामने आ रही थी चीजें, बट सब चीज स्मूथली चल रहा था, धीरे धीरे ही चल रहा था, लेकिन चल रहा था। अचानक मैं 34-35 साल का जब हुआ, तो तबीयत बहुत ज्यादा बिगड़ने लगी, बहुत ज्यादा। तो उस समय फिर मैं एक बार लौट कर इन्हीं के पास आया, डॉक्टर देवी सेट्टी के पास, कि सर ऐसा ऐसा प्रॉब्लम फिर से हो रहा है। तो उन्होंने हाथ खड़ा कर दिया, उन्होंने कहा कि मैं कुछ नहीं कर पाऊंगा, तुमको मेडिसिन पे ही रहना होगा, और कब तक रह सकते हो देखते हैं, तुमको मेडिसिन पे ही रखेंगे। फिर मुझे संदीप सर के बारे में जानकारी हुई। फिर मैं अपने सिस्टर को और ब्रदर इन लॉ को कहा, वो लोग जाके संदीप सर से मिले और संदीप सर ने बताया मुझे ट्रांसप्लांट के बारे में। फिर डिस्कशन शुरू हुआ और चीजें सामने आई और फिर अभी हुआ। तो कम्प्लीटली एवी कैनल डिफेक्ट इसको हम लोग बोलते हैं, और मुझे यही बताया गया है, कंप्लीट एवी कैनल डिफेक्ट। और काफी परेशानी होती थी, मतलब विदाउट ऑक्सीजन मैं नहीं रह पाता था। 6 मिनट वॉक के लिए मुझे 2 बार 3 बार रुकना पड़ता था। अगर मैं विदाउट ऑक्सीजन चल रहा हूँ तो 6 मिनट 7 मिनट चलने के लिए मुझे 2 मिनट में रुकना पड़ता था, उसके बाद फिर आगे बढ़ता था। तो इस तरीके से फिर भी मैं लड़के जैसे भी हो मैं अपना काम कर ही लेता था, बट प्रॉब्लम होता था। अब नियरेस्ट अभी 3-4 महीनों में मुझे ऐसा लगने लगा था कि अब बहुत मुश्किल होने वाला है, क्योंकि बाथरूम जाने में भी मुझे परेशानी होने लगी थी। लगता था कि अब बॉडी ज्यादा सर्वाइव नहीं कर पाएगा। फिर संदीप सर की आशीर्वाद से सब कुछ अच्छा हो गया। वो आगे देखते हैं और क्या हो सकता है, अभी तक तो ठीक है।
जी शुक्रिया। अभी मैं मिस्टर मरकाबंधु, फिर उनके बेटे मिस्टर कौशिक को रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी। सो मिस्टर मरकाबंधु, कैन यू हियर मी? I request you to address the media, share your experience on what you went through and how are you doing now and how well have you recovered now.
Hello. Hello.
So we can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, all of you. Actually, in 2012, I had this problem. When my director called me to his cabin, it is next to my desk where I am sitting, I got that breathlessness. At the time, they have suggested some doctor, and he said that we have taken a lot of tests, and he said that nothing is there. You are, go ahead, you are completely good now. And then it was there for 1 or 2 days. After that, I am normal. I was normal. And after that, in 2015, we had been to US for my son's graduation. At the time when we were in New York, I got the same symptoms again. And once we returned back to India, I consulted my doctor. Again, she took a lot of tests and she couldn't conclude anything. And she just suggested one Dr. Sridharan for asthmatic treatment. And that doctor also treated for me for asthma. In 2017, we were on a family tour. At that time, my sister's son, who is schoolmate of Dr. Srivastava, CMI, he asked me to consult him, and they took him there to him. There, hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, then Dr. Srivastava asked me to take CT scan and X-ray and other things. Then he concluded that I am suffering by idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And from that onwards, I am taking medicine through his consultancy. And in last 2019 August, I got worst. I mean, I am unable to breathe and I have to be with continuous oxygen. Then Dr. Srivastava suggested Dr. Pavan. From that onwards, he took a lot of tests and other things and he suggested for transplant. And it was done on 16th of December. The great sir, Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Srivastava, Dr. Pavan's team took the thing, and now I am normal. I am playing my second innings. Started playing my second innings with normal condition. I hope it will continue. And I want to tell you one thing. Dr. Pavan and his team, chanceless, they are doing a tremendous job. And normally people are working for salary. And here they are working for service, sacrifice. That is important to say. I am not exaggerating anything. Thanks, Dr. Pavan and his team. Yeah,
Thank you,
over
sir.
to.
Thank you so much, sir. It was nice listening to your side of the story.
Yeah. And I am now without oxygen only.
That's very great to see, and also like how you have recovered. Definitely, it's a very good life ahead, sir.
Thank you.
I suppose we come towards the end. I will conclude this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Thank you, Dr. Pavan. Thank you, all the patients who have come, Mr. Margabandhu. Thank
Please.
you.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Don't, hereafter, don't call us as patients.
Sir, never, I will
Call
not.
by name. Call by name.
Yes, Mr. Margabandhu.
That's a very positive affirmation of a new life. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exceptional.
Thank you.
That sums up the entire meeting. I'm so glad you said that, sir. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
And you know, in all of this, all of us must very solemnly remember that there were two young individuals, two brave families, desperately saddened families who decided to make this incredible contribution. It's
Sure.
probably we've seen two individuals benefit immensely from this. We also have seen countless others benefit from this donation. And I think at the bottom of it all, there's a great deal of credit that should go to organizations like Jeevan Sarthakate and the government of Karnataka that has very tightly regulated and controlled the organ donation program in Karnataka. Yes, there has been a backstep because of COVID, but this is one state that has benefited innumerable number of patients with end stage liver, kidney, heart, lung disease in a very, very positive way. And I think their contribution cannot be ignored. We are all here being able to help and serve patients with all these conditions simply because of their selfless 24/7 support. And that's something that we would encourage. And we would like all of us to discuss between ourselves and our families and our friends and promote organ donation, because I don't know. There's a strange fact that 6 out of the 10 of us in this meeting right now would probably end up with one or another degree of organ dysfunction in our 6th decade. So there's a high chance that 6 out of 10 of us will require an organ transplant between 60 to 85 years of age. In this meeting alone, it could be me too, because that's how the human body that's how the human body behaves with time. So all of us, when all of us probably require an organ transplant, it is very important that some of us who don't at least make this selfless sacrifice when we are no more. And that's a very touching and a poignant subject. I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to mention it. I think we should take this with a great deal of sensitivity. We should take this forward with a great deal of humility, as not to be claiming to be people who can do a terrific operation or take care of patients who have such deadly diseases, but with a great deal of humility, because we have been honored or we have been blessed with this opportunity. And with that comes the responsibility. So thank you so much. I'm so touched, and I'm so grateful to God for giving me this opportunity to work in collaboration and help so many patients with a fantastic team of people. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Atawar. Thank you, Dr. Pavan, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Markabandhu, and thank you, Mr. Pavan Singh, for joining us and sharing your experiences.